just to be content with just hanging around and making sure it doesn't look bad. Like, you got to go to try to win the game and be the first aggressor throwing the ball some.
Chiz, this is also a situation where I can see that if you didn't really have a good offensive line, but how much have we talked about how good Kentucky's offensive line has been over the last couple of years, especially early in the season, and yet they still don't have that game plan?
I would make the argument, Chiz, that they were better off last year without a quarterback, with a wide receiver playing in the Wildcat, than they are right now with two quarterbacks that they felt pretty good about heading into the season, and the offensive line having to do something to do with that. But I just don't know what the MO of this offense is right now. What is their identity? Last year it was about being physical. It was that offensive line being able to move people off the line of scrimmage. I don't know what they are right now.
Well, I saw a couple of things that were promising. I saw a good screen game in there. I saw them when they wanted. I saw them when they wanted to run the ball. They ran it on what is arguably one of the best defenses in the league. Mm-hmm. At one point in the first half, they took the line of scrimmage over at moving the football. But the lack of the downfield vertical passing game, nobody can watch that game and make an argument. You have to be, I don't care if it's risky. I understand when you throw the ball,
go out swinging.
2 out of 3 things can happen and they're bad. I understand all that. But you can't win by showing that sort of game plan moving forward. Guys, if they don't get that fixed, this could be a season that ends up being pretty much of a disaster.
Let's not forget, too, we talked about this earlier on our show, PB, early in the week. They have the most difficult schedule remaining, according to FPI. I mean, they got past Georgia today, or that game's in the books now. They still have to play against Alabama. They still have to play against Florida. So this is a game heading into the year that people thought that Kentucky had a chance to move forward, with me being one of those guys. And right now, this is a year that looks like they're taking a step back.
Georgia Bulldogs were hoping this offense would take a little bit more of a step forward. They didn't really need to do much, right, with how good this defense was. Stetson Bennett, at least fairly solid earlier. He caught up with Cole Kubelik after the win.
Obviously not a game where you put the ball in the air much today, but how would you grade the offense this afternoon?
I thought we played really well. They play great complementary football. They know what their team does well, and they know how to play to those strengths. I think in the first half we had 4 drives, with one being the 2-minute drive at the end. I think everybody played great. I made two poor throws. But other than that, I thought it was a really strong day.
We saw another tip pass for an interception. Coach Smart told me at halftime it's a screen, not a big deal. But is there anything that you feel like you can adjust to minimize those moving forward?
Just find the windows, maybe quicken up my feet, get around those big guys. I don't know. It's never been a big deal before, but I guess it is now, and so we're going to have to fix it.
Anything from the Kentucky defense that took you off guard, surprised you a little bit today structurally?
Not really. They're pretty much the same guys. Hard football players, good football players, but no, nothing too surprising.
Thanks a lot, Stetson.
Yep, appreciate it.
Stetson, did you get your towel?
A win is a win, and that's what Stetson Bennett got. It wasn't a great stat line, 9 of 13 for 2 interceptions. What did you see from him and Todd Monken's plan for Stetson in this one?
Well, number one, if I'm a Georgia fan, there's probably a little bit of concern. You know, your aspirations are college football playoff or bust, right? And I'm seeing a quarterback now that in the last 2 weeks has thrown 5 interceptions. I don't see a lot of the downfield passing game. I understand that today he had his best receivers out in George Pickens, but they have what they have. Those are the receivers. He's got some tight ends. He's got some other guys that they've got to be able to throw the football down the field. The running game is very solid, and I like that. But again, I don't see Todd Monken even today taking a very aggressive approach to throwing the football down the field. And you can't make the argument that he's worried about the offensive line or they can't protect or all those things. You have to throw the football down the field. In the last 2 weeks, I haven't seen them be able to do that very consistently at all, CD.
Yeah, in terms of the receivers, I'm with you 100%. I think that is really what limits their ability to throw the football down the field, the desire to throw the football down the field. No George Pickens today. That obviously hurts you in the ability to stretch the field. You're playing with a couple freshmen. In the interceptions, PB, I don't put the interceptions on Stetson Bennett at all. The screen, you know, if you're an offensive lineman blocking on screen, you got to get that guy's hands down, right? He could have maybe tried to miss the guy throwing it between the window a little bit better, but that's on the offensive line to me. And then the receiver down the sideline stopping on his route, quarterback's got to be able to trust his receivers that they're going to run their routes and be where they're supposed to be. So I'm not as concerned about the interceptions as I am the inability to stretch the field. And I think that's some of the limitations that come along with receivers that can't separate and quarterbacks that don't necessarily have the arm to throw it deep.
I'm throwing my hands up here. Okay, you guys are negative Nancy's. Here's what it is. Georgia's defense was great, and how about Zamir White? Let's talk about how positive he was, because I feel bad because Georgia fans right now are thinking, hey, this was just another win. And
I guarantee they're more negative than we are right now.
No, I know, because they feel like this team could be something special if they unlock something. We saw the first career 100-yard rushing game for Zamir White, a career high for him. But does the offense go through him now, and it's just that simple?
I mean, the strength of this offense was always going to be the running backs. Running the football with that offensive line who's improved throughout the season, running the football. That's what Kirby Smart wants to be, right? A physical, downhill, rushing team. I'm actually surprised, Chiz. I don't know necessarily if we're looking at this offense as what we thought we would see. In the preseason, we talked about Todd Monken coming in and what he'd be able to do to create a little strain on defenses, and it looks a lot like what we've seen the last couple years. So maybe that's what Kirby wants to do. Maybe he wants to cater to his defense, who's the strength of his team. Maybe today they knew they didn't have to throw the football. With Florida on the horizon, let's not show too much. Let's go out there, be conservative, and then next week we'll let it all hang out.
Well, I will say this. Zamir White, and as I watch him evolve the last 3 weeks, even in the Alabama game, I thought he's really running with an aggressive mentality. He's running with his pads down. He's running very physical. And I think, CD, running backs get into grooves. I think when you give them the ball and you feed them the ball and you do it enough, then they get their vision working. They get their cuts working. This guy's got it all now. Physically, he was the #1 running back coming out of high school in the country for a reason. He's big, he's fast, he's physical. He's starting to give it into his groove. Today he carried it over 20 times. I think for Georgia to continue to be successful running the ball, he's the one to do it. Not James Cook. He's a good addition. But Zeus is the one that they got to give the rock to, and he's getting better every week.
I agree with you, because I think running backs traditionally, you talk about the big backs were the bell cow guys that were carrying the ball 30 times a game. They get better as the game wore on. I wonder if today's style of play, where you use 3 or 4 different running backs, prevent guys from getting into rhythms, prevent them from being able to start taking a toll on the defenses. Because I just, last week, Larry Roundtree, we watched the way he ran the football, 37 carries, and he seemed to get better as the game went on. I wonder if that's an issue for running backs these days.
Well, I think it probably is, because, again, the key is reps, right? Repetitions during the game. But I think what you see in a lot of high-tempo offenses that are trying to run plays at warp speed, then you do have you really need 2 running backs to be able to do that. But this is not that type of offense. This is an offense where they're going to slow it down, methodically run it down the field, and a guy carrying it 25 times a game is something you need.
Again, a Georgia DNA victory. Defense is great. Offense is good, just good enough, and they throw a bunch of recruits at you that you're going to pretty much out-athlete everybody at the end of it. Kirby Smart's the guy who recruits them all, and he caught up with Cole Kubelik after the win.
Injuries on defense. How did that limit what you guys could call today?
Well, it didn't limit what we could call. It just didn't have a lot of strike and push up there like we need. And when you lose some guys like that, you got other guys that got to step up. That's part of what 2020 is.
Run game was dominant. How do you become more explosive through the passing game moving forward?
Don't throw interceptions. We've gotten better at passing the ball. We just didn't get a chance to show it today because we could run it. And when we ran it well. And when we threw it, we made some mistakes.
Thank you very much, Coach.
Thanks.
All right, joining us right now is a man who was on the call. Already a quick costume change there for Jordan Rogers. Looked like a male model there for Halloween. Jordan, you watched that game. Overall, what'd you take from the Georgia Bulldogs getting that 11-point win? We're going to try to get back to Jordan in just 1 second as we're having a little bit of audio difficulties. So hang tight there. I think
he looked like he was saying good stuff, though.
I know. It looked really good. Looked really animated. If you're watching this in a sports bar, you're like, man, Jordan just killed it overall. But when you saw Kirby has this type of, he doesn't get fired up about it. I mean,
I think we need to actually talk about what he said at his interview with Cole there. The defense, the losses on defense today, the injuries, is a concern. I mean, heading into Florida next week, losing some of those players, particularly Jordan Davis in the middle of that defense, is a concern. Quay Walker went off with an injury, didn't return. that is a concern. And typically before the Florida game, you have that bye week to chance to get healthy. But because of the issues at Florida with the COVID stuff and having to move some games around, both of those teams will go in. And Georgia certainly looks a little shorthanded at this point defensively.
And don't forget his backup went down too, and that was Julian Rochester. And let me tell you, the strength of the Georgia defense is the middle of the defense. When you have a great defense, it's because you're stout in the middle. That's where it started with those two 310, 325-pound guys. Losing them is huge going into next week.
Remember, Lewisine was banged up a little bit on the ankle as well, too. So that win does come at a cost. We'll try to get Jordan Rodgers a little bit later, but let's go ahead and take a look at Georgia's upcoming schedule because you guys just talked about it. Traditionally, there is that bye week going into that game in Jacksonville, but fairly manageable outside of next week. Of course, we'll see Florida.